You turned out so unusual. I fixed your tongue so you could say charming things. You don't even say hello to the villagers. They don't say hello to me. They don't have to answer children. When you get old, people will say hello to you. When I get to college, it won't matter if I'm not charming, and it doesn't matter if a person is ugly. She can still do school work. I didn't say you were ugly. You say that all the time. That's what we're supposed to say. That's what Chinese say. We like to say the opposite. It seemed to hurt her to tell me that. Another guilt from my list to tell my mother, I thought. And suddenly I got very confused and lonely because I was at that moment telling her my list, and in the telling it grew. No higher listener, no listener but myself. Ho Chi Q, she shouted. Ho Chi Q. Leave then. Get out. You Ho Chi Q. Get out. I knew you were going to turn out bad. Ho Chi Q. My brothers and sisters had left the table, and my father would not look at me any more, ignoring me. Be careful what you say. It comes true. It comes true. I had to leave home in order to see the world logically. Logic, the new way of seeing. I learned to think that mysteries are for explanation. I enjoy the simplicity. Concrete pours out of my mouth to cover the forests with freeways and sidewalks. Give me plastics, periodical tables, TV dinners with vegetables, no more complex than peas mixed with diced carrots. Shine floodlights into dark corners, no ghosts. I've been looking up Ho Chi Q, which is what the immigrants call us, Ho Chi ghosts. Well, Ho Chi Q, they say, what silliness have you been up to now? That's a Ho Chi Q for you, they say, no matter what we've done. It was more complicated and therefore worse than dogs, which they say affectionately, mostly to boys. They use pig and stink pig for girls and only in an angry voice. The river pirate, great uncle, called even my middle brother Ho Chi Q, and he seemed to like him best. The maggot third great uncle even shouted Ho Chi Q at the boy. I don't know any Chinese I can ask without getting myself scolded or teased, so I've been looking in books. So far, I have the following translations for Ho and or Chi: centipede, grub, bastard carp, chirping insect, jujube tree, pied wagtail, grain sieve, casket sacrifice, water lily, good frying, non-eater, dustpan and broom, but that's a synonym for wife. Or perhaps I've romanized the spelling wrong, and it is Hauchiku, which could mean they are calling us good foundation ghosts. The immigrants could be saying that we were born on Gold Mountain and have advantages. Sometimes they scorn us for having had it so easy, and sometimes they're delighted. They also call us chusing or bamboo nodes. Bamboo nodes obstruct water. I like to look up a troublesome, shameful thing and then say, "Oh, is that all?" The simple explanation makes it less scary to go home after yelling at your mother and father. It drives the fear away and make it possible someday to visit China, where I know now they don't sell girls or kill each other for no reason. Now colors are gentler and fewer, smells are antiseptic. Now when I peek in the basement window where the villagers say they see a girl dancing like a bottle imp, I can no longer see a spirit in a skirt made of light, but a voiceless girl dancing when she thought no one was looking. The very next day, after I talked out the retarded man, the hunter, he disappeared. I never saw him again or heard what became of him. Perhaps I made him up. And what I once had was not Chinese sight at all, but child sight that would have disappeared eventually without such struggle. The throat pain always returns, though, unless I tell what I really think, whether or not I lose my job or spit out gaucheries all over a party. I've stopped checking bilingual on job applications. I could not understand any of the dialects the interviewer at China Airlines tried on me, and he didn't understand me either. I'd like to go to New Society Village some day and find out exactly how far I can walk before people stop talking like me. I continue to sort out what's just my childhood, just my imagination, just my family, just the village, just movies, just living. Soon, I want to go to China and find out who's lying. The communists say they have food and jobs for everybody, or the relatives who write that they have not the money to buy salt. My mother sends money she earns working in the tomato fields in to Hong Kong. The relatives there can send it on to the remaining aunts and their children, and after a good harvest to the children and grandchildren of my grandfather's 2 minor wives. Every woman in the tomato row is sending money home, my mother says, to Chinese villages and Mexican villages and Filipino villages and now Vietnamese villages where they speak Chinese too. The women come to work whether sick or well. I can't die, they say. I'm supporting 50 or I'm supporting 100. What I'll inherit someday is a green address book full of names. I'll send the relatives money and they'll write me stories about their hunger. My mother has been tearing up the letters from the youngest grandson of her father's 3rd wife. He has been asking for $50 to buy a bicycle. He says a bicycle will change his life. He could feed his wife and children if he had a bicycle. We'd have to go hungry ourselves, my mother said. They don't understand that we have ourselves to feed too. I've been making money. I guess it's my turn. I'd like to go to China and see those people and find out what's a cheat story and what's not. Did my grandmother really live to be 99, or did they string us along all those years to get our money? Do the babies wear a Mao button like a drop of blood on their jumpsuits? When we overseas Chinese send money, do the relatives divide it evenly among the commune, or do they really pay 2% tax and keep the rest? It would be good if the communists were taking care of themselves. Then I could buy a color TV. Here is a story my mother told me, not when I was young, but recently when I told her I also talk story. The beginning is hers, the ending mine. In China, my grandmother loved the theater, which I would not have been able to understand because of my 7th grade vocabulary, said my mother. When the actors came to the village and set up their scaffolding, my grandmother bought a large section up front. She bought enough room for our entire family and a bed. She would stay days and nights, not missing even the repeating scenes. The danger was that the bandits would make raids on households thinned out during performances. Bandits followed the actors. But grandmother, the family complained, the bandits will steal the tables while we're gone. They took the chairs to plays. I want every last one of you at that theater, my grandmother waved. Slave girls, everybody. I don't want to watch that play by myself. How can I laugh all by myself? You want me to clap alone? Is that it? I want everybody there. Babies, everybody. The robbers will ransack the food. So let them. Cook up the food and take it to the theater. If you're so worried about bandits, if you're not going to concentrate on the play because of a few bandits, leave the doors open. Leave the windows open. Leave the house wide open. I order the doors open. We are going to the theater without worries. So they left the doors open and my whole family went to watch the actors, and sure enough, that night the bandits struck, not the house, but the theater itself. Bandits, ah! The audience screamed, and the actors screamed. My family ran in all directions, my grandmother and mother holding on to each other and jumping into a ditch. They crouched there because my grandmother could run no farther on bound feet. They watched a bandit loop a rope around my youngest aunt, lovely Orchid, and prepare to drag her off. Suddenly he let her go. A prettier one, he said, grabbing somebody else. By daybreak, when my grandmother and mother made their way home, the entire family was home safe, proof to my grandmother that our family was immune to harm as long as they went to plays. They went to many plays after that. I like to think that at some of those performances they heard the songs of Tsai Yen, a poetess born in AD 175. She was the daughter of Sai Yung, the scholar famous for his library. When she was 20 years old, she was captured by a chieftain during a raid by the southern Hyosung-nu. He made her sit behind him when the tribe rode like the haunted from one oasis to the next, and she had to put her arms around his waist to keep from falling off the horse. After she became pregnant, he captured a mare as his gift to her. Like other captive soldiers until the time of Mao, whose soldiers volunteered, Sa Yen fought desultorily when the fighting was at a distance, and she cut down anyone in her path during the madness of close combat. The tribe fought from horseback, charging in a mass into villages and encampments. She gave birth on the sand. The barbarian women were said to be able to birth in the saddle. During her 20-year stay with the barbarians, she had 2 children. Her children did not speak Chinese. She spoke it to them when their father was out of the tent, but they imitated her with senseless sing-song words and laughed. The barbarians were primitives. They gathered inedible reeds when they camped along rivers and dried them in the sun. They dried the reeds tied on their flagpoles and horses' manes and tails. Then they cut wedges and holes. They slipped feathers and arrow shafts into the shorter reeds, which became knock whistles. During battle, the arrows whistled high whirling whistles that suddenly stopped when the arrows hit true. Even when the barbarians missed, they terrified their enemies by filling the air with death sounds, which Sai Yen had thought was their only music until one night she heard music tremble and rise like desert wind. She walked out of her tent and saw hundreds of the barbarians sitting upon the sand gold under the moon. Their elbows were raised, and they were blowing on flutes. They reached again and again for a high note, yearning toward a high note, which they found at last and held, an icicle in the desert. The music disturbed Sai Yen. Its sharpness and its cold made her ache. It disturbed her so that she could not concentrate on her own thoughts. Night after night, the songs filled the desert no matter how many dooms away she walked. She hid in her tent, but she could not sleep through the sound. Then out of Sai Yen's tent, which was apart from the others, the barbarians heard a woman's voice singing as if to her babies, a song so high and clear it matched the flutes. Sai Yen sang about China and her family there. Her words seemed to be Chinese, but the barbarians understood their sadness and anger. Sometimes they thought they could catch barbarian phrases about forever wandering. Her children did not laugh, but eventually sang along when she left her tent to sit by the winter campfires ringed by barbarians. After 12 years among the southern Hyosung-nu, Sai Yen was ransomed and married to Tung Su so that her father would have Han descendants. She brought her songs back from the savage lands, and one of the 3 that has been passed down to us is 18 stanzas for a barbarian reed pipe, a song that Chinese sing to their own instruments. It translated well.